So Tim,
Yes.
tuning video. Let's kind of finish this off a little bit.
All right. Well, once you've got the high needle and the mid-range needle close, you can now look to start tuning the idle circuit. Couple quick notes. Generally speaking, I see people run the idle mixture too rich and run the throttle trim on the radio too high to get it to idle. The solution here being that you want to lean the idle up as much as you can without it starting to ping a little bit.
So wait, let's talk about that. So I've got the radio, and this is something I notice a lot of new guys ask about. Is they'll start the motor, they're walking out to the thing, and it starts going, and then when they start to spool up, it's all loaded up, and it quits as they start to spool up.
That's because it's way too rich. And then you'll see them up.
Which is the idle mixture.
The idle mixture. Then you'll see them up the trim on the radio because the throttle was just too low, but that's really not the solution. The trim needs to come back down, and you need to look at the carburetor and see where the carburetor is open, and
should be near that mark.
Should be very close to the idle mark.
Yep.
And then tune it with the needle from there to get it to keep running. When these Nitro motors are running right and they're tuned correctly, they idle very, very, very low. It's very, very subtle the way they idle.
So what about, well, a lot of people are afraid to mess with the idle unless the motor's broken. You kind of need to get it broken a little bit, get some tanks through it, right?
What you need to do is you need to get the other needles in sync with one another. You need to get the other needles tuned to where the idle mixture is going to be in its correct window too, because then you got the relationship between coming off of the full circuit, the full throttle circuit, meaning the small needle here, the main needle, and you'll hit hold and go to the idle, and sometimes you'll get this over revving pinging sound, and that's either because the high end is too lean or the mid range is, or the idle mixture is too lean.
Yeah, so
it's a mixture of the
So I come in, I hit hold, I go to land, and if it's sitting there going that kind of thing.
Generally speaking, there's a couple things that can go on there. You got the trim set so high on the radio that it's dragging the clutch. As the motor is attempting to idle, the blades are spinning the clutch, and it's in turn spinning the motor, and the motor's not tuned because the throttle is all the way down.
Well, wait a minute, I'm trying to understand that. I got a one-way here, so it shouldn't try to turn the motor, but just the gear itself and everything.
The main gear is hooked up to the clutch and the clutch bell, and if the blades are now spinning that and the motor's still biting, it's going to try to spin the motor around.
Yeah, in other words, the motor's still trying to turn the blades a little bit.
Right, exactly. That's probably a better way to put it. Yeah, you got it.
So, Tim, other than the glow plug just completely failing, I've had some glow plugs where the motor will start, you take it up, the minute you give it a bunch of power, just quits on you.
Right.
So I've seen that as one symptom where the glow plug's still working, it'll start, but if you're having that and you're tuned, and you're not lean or anything, and it does that.
Yeah, a good way to test the glow plug is to start the engine. If you pull off your glow igniter, and the engine changes response at all, that means the plug is usually fouling. And best way to tell that, take the plug out. If you see that the coils are kind of wadded,
mashed down
sideways, then you're generally that's a sign of either too much compression or it's just way too lean or oversped. There's a couple things to go on.
And also, so another one I always see come up is, man, I keep burning up glow plugs keep going bad on me. I get 2 flights and the glow plug, it's dead.
Right. Well, so look and see what kind of silicone. That's actually something we need to cover too. On that note, I've seen glow plugs repeatedly go bad. That's RTD from your exhaust gasket getting into the motor and killing your glow plug. Other than that, it's just too lean.
Too lean, yeah.
Too lean. The motor's pinging the whole time. What you're doing is you're over compressing, and the element inside the glow plug is going to get all wadded, and the coils can be distorted, so you're no longer going to get even flame travel in the engine. It's just going to run like
another thing I notice on a lean is if you pull the plug and it's all chalky white, like I can't explain, like an ash almost, then too lean too.
Yeah, and vice versa. If you pull a plug out and the thing's soaking wet and it's got no color to it almost looks brand new and it's just wet, you're just way too rich. Really, ideally, you want to see a nice cocoa brown on the outside of the plug. And a nice shiny wire where it's touching the outside of the element, and it'll kind of go opaque as the coil goes down. That's going to be a nice tuned plug. Another important note to touch on is the exhaust, the header. I see many helicopters, you look down on it, if you pull the helicopter up like this and you look, you were to zoom in, you would notice around the cylinder head right here,
right in here,
the exhaust manifold sits here, the header. You'll notice I've used high temp epoxy. And
hold on, let me zoom in there.
Can you see that?
Okay, go.
All All right. You see here, I've used high temp epoxy, and you see how it's dry? There's no wet. No, the motor's wet just from residual fuel residue from flying.
Yeah, it's not dripping out of there.
Around the header itself, it is completely 100% dry. What that's done is we're sealed. Okay, a two-stroke motor works off a reversion. The exhaust pipe actually has gas going in and out as this motor pulses. And if you're drawing in air outside of what the whole setup is, you're gonna have lean running.
We're going to pause here for a minute, guys, while the farting blades are quieter.
What are we covering here? Exhaust?
Okay, so yeah, talk about the exhaust again and go ahead and tip it.
Well, on a two-stroke motor, it is absolutely necessary to seal the header, meaning no leaks in the exhaust system. You can see that it's dry around the header where the header meets the crankcase there. It's totally dry. That means we're not getting any blow-by, we're not getting any air drawing in there when the motor's running.
Yeah, and also you notice, is some guys I see all the time, they'll have black crap right here because it's not sealed, it's loose.
Sealed, and you got the vibration, the aluminum versus the aluminum, you'll get kind of that black oxide stuff that mix out with nitro, makes a real gritty black mess. That's imperative, that's a good sign that it's leaking. I found the best stuff to use. This stuff's available at Home Depot. It's called PC Fahrenheit high temperature epoxy. It's a two-part epoxy. It works very well, and it stays working well. It stays, on there for as long as you want the header on the motor. It's never gonna break down. Like I've used some JB Wells and some different types of high temp epoxy, and they tend to break down after about 10 flights. This stuff seems to last very long time.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the RTV has worked, but every now and then it'll blow out. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So. The way I like it, just simply because it's just, you put it on there, forget about it. You
more permanent.
No longer got to worry about it. And hey, when you pull the bolts out, it still pops right off your hand. No real force required. Real simple.
Yeah, you're not gluing it together.
No. Really, all you're doing is filling in all the imperfections of the metal, and it's kind of holding it tight. It's not really gluing it, but that's really important. And also the important thing, especially on these pressurized systems, is you'll notice here that I've doubled up all the fuel ends. I cut a piece of fuel tubing off and put it on there. Where I put this thing together with the fittings, they fit very tight around the fittings. All the fuel hoses are in good shape. If this leaks at all, you're gonna have very inconsistent running.
So Tim, one other question that comes up a lot is, some guys, they stick their finger up the back plate or use a temp gauge on the head and all that kind of stuff. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, it's good for a general guideline. If you're really new at this, a temp gauge is gonna help keep you from burning the thing up. But on the other hand of that, it can cause you to burn it up, because say on like a cold day, say you got a day where it's 40, 50 degrees outside, like some of you guys are dealing with, and you're gonna say, well, my motor's only running at say 150, 155 degrees. Do I need to go leaner to make more power and get it up to temperature? Well, not necessarily, because if it's nice and cold outside, you actually want to run the mixture richer. And if you're still focused on, I gotta hit 180 or 200 degrees or whatever number it is for that particular engine you're running, you run the risk of actually running it too lean to get to that temperature. And in reality, you're burning the thing up, not making the power, and just generally doing yourself a disservice. It's a good guideline, but I think once you're acquainted with and decent at tuning sight and smoke, smoke and the feel of the power, and most importantly, your ear is going to make all the difference for you.
So okay, so regular day, it's in 70s, 80s, you're unsure, temp gauge just to make sure you're not running too hot, that kind of thing.
Right.
Myself, I've gotten to where I can feel the back plate just to make sure, hey, wow, it's way too hot.
Way too hot. Yeah.
So it's really not...
general guideline, and it applies even for really hot days too. I just flew this thing, and as the motor sit, it'll actually heat soak even more because the fan's no longer running. But I can hold my finger on here on the back plate all day long. If you ever have to let go of the back plate with your thumb, it's too hot. You're too lean.
So the bottom line, it's a good check to make sure you're not running too hot. You're not, that kind of thing. But you don't use it for tuning.
No. You use it as general guideline, but to really tune, it's all in the ear. It's all in the ear, the whole thing.
Cool, Tim.
All right.
See you on the flight, buddy.
Absolutely.
By the way, since you are running a YS system with the pressure valve, point at it, the one-way valve.
One-way valve, yeah.
how do you tell when that thing's screwing up?
Generally, the motor will be inconsistent. All of a sudden, the thing's just going to go lean. Like, if you get a hole in this line or the check valve starts to not perform properly, you're going to go from flying either and it's rich or it's tuned and you're happy, and all of a sudden it's just going to go lean. I mean, lean as in like you grabbed and put half a turn in the needle. It just goes insanely lean. 9 times out of 10, look at this line. You've either got a hole in it, a cut around where it fits around the tank nipple, or something's going on there.
Yeah, also, so there's 2 failure modes of this valve. One is it doesn't stop the one way, so your tank never gets pressurized.
Right.
And the other one is
it'll leak.
Or it just gets blocked and doesn't.
Right. Or yeah. I mean, there's a couple different things that you have to do. They can either just allow it to blow by and never stop, to where the pressure just sits there and pulses back and forth between the motor and the tank. You never really get anything. It'll leak, which is very rare, or it'll get blocked. You know, generally speaking, I run a fuel filter on the helicopter, I run a fuel filter in the tank and on the line coming from the tank, fueling it up. I never have any clogs, never any issues, you know. Those filters usually capture all those little particles.
Cool. So last thing, we kind of didn't cover.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'll see you guys again, man.
So last thing we kind of didn't cover in your last tuning, but when you were tuning the needles and getting it all fine, you had a full tank.
Yes.
And then as the tank gets low, yeah, we're going to have to, yeah, see, it's pegging. Hold on, here. So Tim, real quick, with the tuning stuff, we're going to go out and do your pro tuning in a minute. But one thing I noticed, you were tuning when you had the tank full.
Yes.
So since, you know,
well, I mean, generally speaking, I mean, okay, we run fuel magnets nowadays. I mean, I'm actually using the Lynx MOAS clunk. It works pretty good. Ultimately, you know, I've weighted the clunk and stuff too, because, you know, when I start doing these really aggressive 3D maneuvers, when we got that much fuel in the tank, the magnet is certainly helping drawing fuel, but there is certain times that clunk line is out into open air and it's drawing air. The motor is going to run a little bit leaner as the flight progresses. So generally speaking, run a little rich in the beginning of the flight and fly into the tune.
Right. So the key is here. If you're running stock or whatever,
sure.
And you're tuned up here, be aware that you could start to lean out as you get down here. And if that's the case, you want to retune and then leave it at that. And yeah, you'll start out a little rich, but at least you're not going to burn up your motor toward the end of the flight.
Exactly.
Right? Cool. All right, Tim. So we'll go out and do the pro tuning and see you out there.
If you want to call it that.
The Tim tuning.
The pro tuning.
The tool time Tim tuning.